Hey again from the garden, it's Christina from Sunshine and Flora. So this morning I'm in the hoop house doing a little bit of work on my dahlias before I get busy for the day putting all of my market bouquets together for the farmer's market. And I thought I'd just set the camera up and show you guys what I'm doing. A few of the branches and leaves on my dahlias are looking a little bit sad, and I think I just need to clean them up a bit. I'll zoom the camera in and show you what I'm talking about. But there's a little bit of yellowing starting on some of the leaves, and then some of the ends of the leaves are starting to die off, and I think it's just because they're touching the ground. One of the things that you have to watch with dahlias is so that the leaves aren't touching the ground, because then they become very susceptible to disease. So what I'm going to do is clean the bottom leaves off of the plants and give them a good fertilizer, and then I think that will give them a jump start. But let me show you what I'm talking about. So here is a good example of what I'm talking about. Can you see that this leaf is turning kind of whitish yellow, and then the end of the leaf is browning? I think that these just need to be cleaned up, and there might be a little disease happening. It's not bad. The top of the plant, as you can see, is super healthy. It's pushing a lot of new growth since being pinched. So I'm not concerned about the livelihood of these plants at all. I really just think that they need cleaned up. And like as we move over, you can see some of those leaves, like right back in here, aren't looking as good. And I think they're just getting wet and touching the soil, and so they just need to be cleaned up a bit. Sometimes with flowers, you can also get yellowing on the leaves if your flowers are overwatered. I do not think that is the case with these. For one, they're in the hoop house, so they don't get all of the rain. Secondly, we are in a severe drought, so we are getting no rain. I am watering these, but not enough to be overwatering them. So I really just think that the bottom leaves need to be cleaned up. So let's do that first, and then we'll fertilize. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this okay. This is the first plant that I showed you, and I'm just going to come through and I'm going to take the bottom leaves off of this plant. Basically, you can just pull them off. These bottom ones don't look bad, but they eventually will be touching the ground. So I just want to make sure I'm cleaning them up so that they have plenty of air movement around the bottom of the plant. Can you see now how this is all cleared out? That is going to be so much better. And then I may even pile just a little bit of soil up around this plant because he actually is a little bit wobbly. Then we'll move on to the next plant and do the same thing. I'm going to take the bottom three off of this one. I wouldn't have had to, but these are starting to look a little bit iffy, so I just want to get those out of there. So this plant, you can see I cleaned it up really good, but I did leave this because this actually is another side branch that is developing, and that will produce a bloom. So I wanted to keep that on there, but I just cleaned up the bottom leaves around it so it'll have nice air movement. So a lot of the dahlias that I planted in my hoop house this year are single varieties that I tried to research and that were prolific bloomers. So for example, I have Caitlin's Joy here. I have Linda's Baby. I actually have 3 plants of Linda's Baby here. I have Joey Morella, Joey Nikki. This is kind of an experiment year to try out a lot of different single varieties to figure out what my favorites are. And then next year, I will, well, in the fall, I will store all of these tubers. And then next year, I will be able to plant all of my stored tubers of my favorite varieties and hopefully not have to buy any tubers, because we all know, while it's really fun, it can get a little expensive. And if I end up finding some favorite varieties that I really like that produce heavily, there's no sense in ordering new tubers every year. I might as well save them, because I have a successful method of saving tubers and planting my favorites every year for really prolific harvests. So one of my other experiments for dahlias this season is where I am growing them. So as you can see, I'm growing a whole bunch in the hoop house here for an experiment. I'm hoping that this lengthens my growing season after we have a frost. I'm also hoping maybe this cuts down on some of the bug pressure that I always get the end of the season. It seems like I have to really start covering all of my plants with organza bags because of the bug pressure. So I'm hoping maybe that growing in a hoop house will help alleviate that just a little bit. But I want to see the difference in the dahlias, growing them in the hoop house versus growing them out in the garden for stem length, height, productivity. I just thought it would be a really good experiment. So I have this whole row of dahlias in here, and I have 3 full planting beds of dahlias out in the garden as well. I think I planted 100 and maybe 15 to 120 dahlia tubers this year, and I would say 95% of them have come up out of the ground. So I'm crossing my fingers for a really big dahlia harvest the end of August and all the way till frost the 1st of October. So now that I have all the leaves cleared away, I'm going to go ahead and fertilize everything with a fish emulsion fertilizer. I use Bloom City fish emulsion, and this has some really good nutrients for the plants. I want to see if this will give them a little bit of a boost. And now that those leaves are gone off of the bottom, it is much easier to water these. It will smell like fish in here for a little while, but if this works, it'll be totally worth it. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. I will make sure to keep you guys updated on how my dahlias grow throughout the season. I cannot wait to start getting blooms on these plants. And when I do, I'll make sure to give you guys a full tour and share what I think is growing best and what my favorite varieties are. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you soon.